What's up, folks? It is 8 p.m. on another Wednesday, December 7th, 2016, and that means that the MMA Ratings Podcast is back for yet another show. I am Raphael Garcia. Schwan Humes will be joining us later on this evening. I'm sure he's probably still on his way home from another hard day at work, but I'm here to talk all things MMA, and we have some news to talk about, some other news to talk about, fight previews, recaps from last week. We're doing the same thing that we usually do. So sit back, enjoy, listen to some MMA. Again, you can always catch us at MMA Ratings Net on the internet. Catch us there. You know that thing that everybody uses just about every day. You can catch us on Instagram at MMA Ratings Net and on Twitter as well. Same handle, MMA Ratings Net. You can also catch me and my sports ramblings at rgarcia_sports. I'm talking MMA, basketball, football, baseball, just about everything that's going on in the world of professional sports. And so, with that in mind, I am back once again to talk to you about some news that's going on in MMA. We have quite a bit to talk about this week. It's kind of an odd week. It feels like it's a slow week, but it's really not because we have an event. We have two events this weekend, and we had a lot of news that broke over the week. Just some of the random happenings that go on every day in the world of MMA. And I apologize because I'm also live tweeting at the same time. So you have to bear with me if you can hear the typing and all that other good stuff. So yeah, let's go ahead and keep the party going. So the first thing we wanted to talk about is let's talk about some news first instead of jumping straight into the fight previews. Let's give Schwan a little bit of time to join in. Is that I'm sure you've probably seen. I know I've shared some of the articles I've seen in reference to Cris Cyborg. She is perhaps one of the more famous female fighters in the game right now. But her name was in the news this week as it came out that apparently she had turned down two fights for a UFC title. Now, this is not the bantamweight title, which is what you would expect. This is a UFC featherweight, women's featherweight title. So that means that the promotion was willing to create a featherweight championship that Cris Cyborg would have the opportunity to win, which is a massive announcement. Dana White mentioned this on the show UFC Unfiltered, and I'm going to talk about that show in a minute as well. But Dana White was having conversations with the host of that show, and he was talking about these fights that Cyborg was offered and apparently turned down. According to Dana White, he was saying that she was offered two separate fights, one against Jareen Geronimo, another against Holly Holm. Both of these fights were meant to solidify whom was the best women's featherweight fighter in the UFC. Great idea, great proposition, but Dana White said that Cyborg turned down both of these fights because she was unable to make the weight in 8 weeks. And after the continuing conversations with her, Dana White also said on the show that he was questioning if featherweight is even the right weight for Cyborg because, as we know, one of the big issues around Cyborg is the fact that she's consistently talked about not being able to make 135 pounds. There was a documentary on her that was done before the UFC fight when she fought Leslie Smith. And there was a conversation on just how difficult it was for her to make weight. Obviously, we all remember the video clip of her sitting in the bathtub crying. So it's clear, this is a big woman, big muscular woman, and she continuously has a hard time to make that catch weight of 140 pounds. Now, listening to Dana White, listening into this interview, it really sounds sounded like he was putting the onus and the blame on her, which is understandable. He's the president of UFC. His job is to make the best fights that everybody wants to see. So he was continuously talking about it, and the hosts were kind of playing up the idea that, oh, Cyborg is turning down fights that she's been asking for. So obviously she doesn't really want them. Maybe she shouldn't be at featherweight. And it was very interesting to listen to this back and forth because it definitely was meant to make her the bad guy. It was clear as day that Cyborg was the villain in that conversation between these three men. However, Cyborg, I guess, heard the interview and she had a very interesting response. I'm going to read that to you once. Give me a second to find it, but I'm going to read what Cris Cyborg said. Apologies, doing some more live tweeting. But let's listen to Cris Cyborg's response as to why she turned down 2 featherweight title fights. This came out yesterday, December 6th. So first off, let me read Dana White's comments. What's crazy about this is I offered Cris Cyborg a title fight at 145 pounds a month ago. She had 8 weeks to get ready for it. She said she couldn't make the weight. She couldn't make 145 pounds. So then I offered her another 145 title fight for Brooklyn, UFC 208. She turned it down. She turned down 2 145-pound title fights. One because she said she couldn't make 145 in 8 weeks. And Joe Silva's like, if she can't make 145 pounds in 8 weeks, 145 isn't the right weight class for her either. Going on, White also said, first of all, obviously we when we did the deal with Cyborg, we sat down with her and said, listen, if you can make it down to 135 pounds, maybe we can hire you a dietitian and help you get there or whatever. And you get in the mix, get you a couple of with these girls and then fight Ronda Rousey for the title. She was all in. Why I said that's why she signed a deal. Then she was having a hard time doing it. So she can cut down to 140. Then the whole thing is about I can make 140 pounds. Finally, we just said, fuck it. All right, we'll make 145 pound title for you. And here we go. She said, I can't make 145 pounds in 8 weeks. This doesn't have to do with weight. Obviously, it has to do with weight cutting. And I don't know what it has to do with. So we're going to figure it out. So, yeah. Now, those are Dana White's comments. And Cyborg responded on Tuesday. What's today? Wednesday? Tuesday. And these are her words, which kind of long-winded, but yeah, kind of long-winded, but definitely an explanation to how the position she's in. In my last weight cut, I almost died. I was in the bathtub cutting weight, and I thought, I will die in this bathtub. It was the worst weight cut in my life. My nutritionist, George Lockhart, who, by the way, is a UFC employee, didn't do an effective job with this birth control pill he indicated, saying that will help me. But thank God, in a war, I made weight cut 24 pounds in a week. My body was retaining a lot of water. The last time I spoke with George Lockhart was in the locker room before my fight. He disappeared after the fight. I'm not working with him anymore. For the first time, I didn't warm up in the locker room like I do for every fight because I was too weak. I was just praying for God and went for the fight. And once again, God gave me the victory. After all, I went back to my hometown on Sunday and I felt sick on Sunday. My mother gave me tea and I fell asleep, blah, 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 let's go. The next day, like always, I do after my fights, I did blood tests to see if everything was okay after a terrible weight cut. And for the first time, the nurses couldn't take my blood. It was so thick it wouldn't come out. So when we couldn't do tests, I was in treatment for 10 days with Dr. I can't say that name. I was in observation because I was feeling sick all the time. You can see that I give no interviews after the fight. I told UFC Brazil PR Lilian Camparos that I wanted to cancel all my interviews and I couldn't travel. After all, at home, I decided I would not fight at this weight anymore. She's talking 140. And I wouldn't only fight in my division, 145, and only on 12 weeks notice. For my last fight, they told me 8 weeks before. So she's saying here that she fought on 8 weeks notice to get down to 140 pounds, and this is how bad she felt. So now she's making a professional decision that she's only going to fight at 145 pounds, and she's only going to take that fight on 12 weeks notice. I got a call from the UFC offering me another catchweight fight, and I said I would not fight at this weight anymore. I need a break to get my health back to normal because my body was weak and I was anemic. After all, they invited me to fight again, but this time my weight, but excuse me, after that, they invited me to fight again, but this time at my weight and for the belt, but with 10 weeks notice. Knowing that I'm recovering, like I said, I told them that I can fight anyone in March. But I need to take care of my body, and no mention of the fact that I'm dealing with severe depression and can't have another brutal weight cut like that before. Like before. This decision is important, more important than the belt or the division. I'm thinking about my health. So let's look at this. Cris Cyborg is very, and she's not necessarily directly refuting, like she's not speaking ill about anyone in the UFC other than George Lockhart, who she said that she didn't think he did a good job. She's talking about what she needs to be an effective fighter and her health. She's talking about what happened to her cutting down to 145 or 140 pounds and how badly that wrecked her body. Now, to hear Dana White come out on the other side and basically denigrate her, try to downplay it to make it seem like she's turning down fights for the sake of turning down fights, something's not adding up. Why? That's my big question. Why does he feel the need to denigrate her in such a way? She's simply asking for adequate time to make a proper weight cut. For those who are saying, well, Cyborg needs to get off steroids, Cyborg needs to lose all the muscle, that's not what it's about. To physically, weight cutting puts your body in a state of peril. Oftentimes it puts people in a state of shock. That's why you've seen in the past, individuals have died from weight cutting. We've seen it recently in mixed martial arts that people have died or come very close to dying trying to cut weight. With that information, with that history, we have got to understand that we've got to be more precarious with these situations, and to see the way, and it's disturbing to me to see Dana White speak of Cyborg in such a way, because it's not the whole truth. And we've gotten used to Dana White not necessarily giving the whole truth, giving bits and pieces of it, the bits and pieces that make him look clean and the fighters not necessarily look so great. And this is a disturbing situation to me, because we're talking about a fighter's health here. And he's putting her in a position where we know that we know, yes, she's failed a drug test for a diuretic in the past. We understand that. That was almost 7 years. That was about 6 years ago, maybe a little more. It was around 6 years ago. And what type of pressure is he trying to put on her to meet his standards? Like, does he not care? And I'm not saying that in such a white glove type of way, but when you're athletes, when you're quote unquote, well, when you're their employees in some regards, independent contractors and others, but when this individual is coming to you saying that, listen, my health is more important. I can't make the weight in this time frame. Give me this time frame, and I can get down there and we can do business. And you kind of throw her under the bus like this. What does that say? Like, to me, that sends up a red flag, and it's a dangerous situation, because what happens if she hears this, feels pressure, attempts to make the weight cut, and then we see something drastic happen? You do not want to see that, because then you may, not only do you lose her for a fight, you may lose her for her career, or worse. So this is not a situation to play with. This is a serious detriment to what is going on in mixed martial arts when it comes to weight cutting, when it comes to one of the biggest issues of the sport, and especially with the Ali Act becoming a big talking point in recent months. That's another story. We won't be talking about it this week. Maybe we'll talk about it next week when I have the opportunity to look into it a little more. But this is something that we need to keep an eye on as the MMA, as these fighter associations begin to gain more steam. We need to keep an eye on this, because this is a serious situation. And let's also talk about UFC Unfiltered. What exactly is this show? It's a podcast in which it's almost propaganda, to my point. Dana White is able to use this platform to give his side of the story, which is also needed, because if he didn't give his side of the story, this wouldn't be a news story. But it's an opportunity for him to give his side of the story and not necessarily get the hard questions, because the hosts are listening to this and they're lobbing him softballs or not asking any questions at all. So this is akin to a State of the Union address, where he gets to make comments and not really get any feedback or any questioning. Like, this is totally different. Like, if he would have had this conversation with the Luke Thomas, Ariel Helwani, Jeremy Botter, Jonathan Snowden, the conversation would have been completely different, which is why he didn't have this conversation with them, because they would have been asking hardcore questions based on those sources and information that they have. So for those individuals who listen to UFC Unfiltered, and I'm sure it gets a lot of views, it gets a lot of hits, I'm just out of curiosity, let me see what type of traffic this show did today. Sorry, YouTube is taking a little bit longer than most times. Let's see. Yesterday's show did 5,000, almost 6,000 views. Pretty good number in one day. So this is quite and the hosts are Jim Norton and Matt Serra. Yeah, so I knew Matt Serra was one of them. I couldn't remember the other guy. So listening to this show is one thing, but you have to be cognizant of what is going on, because this is definitely as close to propaganda as we can get, because it's not the whole truth from in any way, shape, or form. And it shouldn't be taken that way. Like, listening to this story, you should definitely. This is media 101, but you should always listen to multiple outlets when you're trying to find your news. And in this case, it's easy to see how taking his word on it could easily skew your perception of Cris Cyborg. So at this point in time, I doubt we will, because I've seen some of the comments on the article, some of the comments on different posts about this, that people are still claiming if she just gets off Cyborg, or if she just gets off steroids, or if she just cuts some of that muscle, she'll be able to make 135 pounds. No, it's not. That's not always the case. Especially when it comes to women, it's harder for them to make weight for such competitions. But it's unfortunate that we've gotten to this point with Cyborg, where she has put her health at risk so many different times for these fights, and I hope we don't ever see that situation again. And I'm interested in watching this to see what's been going on in or what's going to go on in the future in reference to this story. So what else are we talking about today? Um, Dana White's response to the Mixed Martial Arts Athletes Association. Another Dana White story. So yeah, this one was. Let me give you a second. So let's talk about that. I have to find. Um, Let me find the piece. And when I first heard and I first saw the the Mixed Martial Arts Athletes Association, um, I was definitely surprised that the people who were on it were on it. Donald Cerrone, Cain Velasquez, Tim Kennedy, T.J. Dillashaw, GSP. Um, was definitely pretty interesting, pretty interested in that. And I was waiting for Dana White's response. Now we finally have that, and it wasn't it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I expected it to be a lot worse. I expected it to be a lot more hilarious, and it was pretty candid. The biggest thing, well, I'm not too surprised that he was definitely very clear in his disdain for Bjorn Rebney, which I don't think is surprising. A lot of fighters, such as King Mo, Eddie Alvarez, and others, have talked, and Julie Kedzie, Leslie Smith, they have talked openly about questioning Bjorn Rebney's participation in this fighters association. Dana White was also very open about it, but his comments on Monday, I believe, were basically very clear. I don't know enough to. This is Dana White's words. I don't know enough about it to really speak on it. Speaking of the MMAAA, the only thing I need to know is the biggest scumbag in the history of combat sports, Bjork, who is his name for Bjorn Rebney, is involved in this thing. Listen, there's three unions out there, all batting against each other. And if you're a fighter, these guys are all looking to get in your pocket. It's a business where guys are going to make money. And as a fighter, if this is what you want to do, you got to figure out whose hand you want in your pocket. And I guarantee you don't want Bjork's hand in your pocket. Listen, if you're going to have a guy in your pocket and you're a fighter, you might want to go out and ask some other fighters what their opinion is of this fucking scumbag. White said, adding that Rebney's motive was just he doesn't have a job. So yeah, that was the basis of Dana's comments about the MMAAA. And honestly, from what I've heard about athletes dealing with Bjorn Rebney, that's not too far off. Is people don't really have a whole lot of pleasant things to say about him. So with that in mind, this is a developing story that athletes should be cognizant of, because it can be it's a sketchy area. And for example, Donald Cerrone during the press call last week openly talked about how he was scared shitless of being on the panel. And I listened to his comments today during his scrum as he got ready for UFC, as he gets ready for his fight next weekend, and he had some pretty interesting things to say. As this is Donald Cerrone's word, and actually let's walk back a little bit. Dana White spoke specifically about Donald Cerrone and how he was surprised that Cerrone is aligned with these guys because, for example, he mentioned a time where Cerrone almost got in trouble and he called Dana White first for help. And I guess Dana White helped him. He kept saying that Dana White's words were that he wished Donald Cerrone would have called him directly and they could have had a conversation, which is something akin to what Dana has said about athletes in trouble in the past. If they pick up the phone to call him, he's willing to help. But seeing Donald Cerrone on this panel put put pause in Dana White's relationship with Donald Cerrone, and Cerrone spoke on that today during his scrum. He says, as far as the association goes, George St. Pierre and Tim Kennedy called me and asked me to be a part of it. I didn't know I was sitting on a board. That's a huge red flag. That kind of took me by surprise. Sitting there like, oh wow, I spoke to Dana White today on the phone. He's coming to town and we're going to go to dinner and talk. There's a lot of things I think this sport needs, retirement pension, healthcare, things I think we need. I wasn't sitting there saying, we're moving forward today, we're going on strike, we need more money, he said during a scrum. That wasn't coming out of my mouth at all. There were a couple of people that were there and I don't plan on working with. There were a couple people there that there were a couple people that were there that I don't plan on working with and being a part of, not mentioning any names. I was there mostly just not saying I'm leading a board. I was there mostly just not saying I'm leading a board or I'm sitting on a board, but more voicing my opinion on what the sports needs. Moving forward, I'm still going to stand strong with those and say this is what I believe we need. I believe as a whole, we need healthcare. We need some kind of pension for retirement. The UFC has been nothing but great to me. I can't complain. They give me what I want. And like Dana said, I called him and he helped out. That's true, man. I was in a bind. He got the best lawyers you can pay and saved my ass. With Cerrone's admittedly close relationship was okay. So like that's the end of that quote there. So I'm wondering what's going to happen with Donald Cerrone. Is he going to back out of this group? I would not be surprised. Would it be a huge blow to that group? Um, I think it would be. So I think it would be a huge blow because he's one of those fighters who's in a great place. He was in good standing with the UFC. He does nothing but what they ask. Fights frequently, puts on great fights. The fans love him. He's not a champion, but he's in that area where he feels like he should be making good money, and he did make good points about there are things that sport needs: fighter pay, improved fighter pay, better representation, retirement pension, healthcare. There are things that these athletes need that they need to begin lobbying for, because if not, they'll never get it. But with what Dana White said on, I believe on Monday, and looking at Cerrone's comments today, I think it'll be interesting to see if he is going to back out of his role. I was most surprised that he said that he didn't know he was going to be on a board. Um, I would wonder what those conversations looked like, or sounded like before they got on this call last week. But I'm sure that we're going to continue to find out about that, and we're going to see some more news about that over the next few weeks. But that's probably that was another news story. It came out today, and I think it's something that we should watch in the coming weeks. The final news story I want to talk about is Ed Roos' return to Bellator this weekend. He's fighting. Did he step in on that late of a notice? But if you're not familiar, Ed Ruth was a major collegiate wrestling star. He signed to Bellator before ever having any amateur fights, having any real MMA experience. He debuted last month. Let me check his Fight Finder real quick. Mm, yeah, he debuted last month. Won in the first round via TKO. He's stepping in last minute to face Emmanuel Palom Palom Palombi at Bellator 168 this Saturday. So yeah, he's definitely stepping in on extreme short notice. And he is, he's someone that's worth watching in mixed martial arts. He's young. He has an extremely great background in amateur wrestling, and that looked like it transitioned well in this first fight. We'll see how he does in his second fight coming on short notice. But I wasn't looking forward to Bellator 168, but I do want to catch his fight just to see how well he does on Saturday. So yeah, that was the other news piece I wanted to break out and talk about this week. So Schwan is still not with us, so we're going to turn back the clock and look at Tough Finale 24 and also talk about UFC Fight Night 102, which is this weekend. So let me pull up those two fight cards. Give me a second. Hmm. Dude, I totally forgot UFC 206 was this Saturday. Huh? That's funny. Open that up. So we're going to talk about that today too. Surprise, surprise. So first things first, UFC Fight Night. Let's look at 102 for actually quick recap back to the Tough Finale 24. Tough 24 season finale. Just wanted to talk about Demetrius Johnson. He continues to show that he's the pound for pound king in mixed martial arts. He definitely had that scary start in the first round. Tim Elliott came out looking to prove a point. Tim Elliott came out with the intentions of shocking the world. And it seemed like he almost got the job done. That choke looked tight, at least from my vantage point, but it didn't get the job done. From that point forward, Demetrius Johnson just went on, doing DJ things. Yeah, he put the beating on Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott was a opponent for all 5 rounds, and I think it was one of those moments where we got to see how great Demetrius Johnson was because he didn't have to. This was definitely a lose everything, gain nothing type of fight. And he went out there and he won very soundly. And he continues to prove that he's the best fighter in the sport. What happens next? Do they ask him to move up to 135, give him a shot at Dominic Cruz again? I think it's still a very tough fight for him because we all remember how that the first one went years ago. So do we put him in that position to get that 135-pound super fight? I would love to see it. Definitely love to see it. I would love to see him taking a fight at 135 against a John Lineker, against a Francisco Rivera, against someone just to get in there and put in some work. And let's just see how it goes. He's someone who has definitely earned their place, earn their big paydays, and he doesn't get the recognition that he does as a champion, but he definitely deserves it. It was good news to see this week that he earned the highest ratings for the UFC on Fox in the last 2 months. So I'm glad to see him finally gain some steam. I hope this continues to go. I hope this continues to grow. I hope they continue promoting him on the Fox platform. Even with this show, he didn't really get enough promotion. The season was more of a promotional vessel than these fights are normally promoted. So it was good to see him get that push and to see the ratings come back and see that it was a positive move in the upward direction. So let's look at what else is going on this weekend. We have UFC Fight Night 102. The main event is Derek Lewis versus Shamil. I'm not even going to Abdurakhimov. Abdurakhimov, maybe, but I'm not going to try to pronounce that name again. But either way, this card I'm not going to say I don't care about. I'm not too interested in. It is in New York. It's the second card in New York, and there are some couple fights that I'm interested in. One, Frankie Perez is back, and he's fighting the dangerous Mark Diakise, or however you say his name. I can't remember how you say his name, but I remember seeing his last fight where he definitely put on a show. Second round TKO. Frankie Perez, is coming off of that brief retirement, and coming off of that win over Sam Stout from last August. So it would be interesting to see what goes on here, how well he looks after such a long layoff. And I know he was training. I know he was definitely doing his thing. So this is a fight that I'm interested in seeing. I'm interested in seeing the women's fight as well. Always because I'm always look forward to seeing what new women's competitors are coming up. We have Juliana Lima and JJ Aldrich. They're fighting, and also Justine Keesh, undefeated Justine Keesh, and Ashley Yoder are fighting as well. So that's a fight. Those are two fights I'm going to keep a close eye on to see who comes out there. Corey Anderson is also fighting Gian Vellante. The main event is heavyweight bout, Derek Lewis and Shamil. Obviously they're putting Derek Lewis in this platform because he's kind of becoming a face. He's kind of becoming someone that fans are enjoying to watch. He's hilarious on social media. If you've never had the opportunity to go look, at his social media profiles, you're doing yourself a disservice because they are vastly hilarious. He is a hard hitter. He's a hard hitter early because we all know that he does not finish as strongly as he starts, which is the thing about the heavyweight division, unfortunately. So we'll see what happens this weekend when he is put in the main event. This is a 5-round fight. So this can be either a huge, massive knockout win for someone, or it could be 25 minutes of the worst MMA action we've ever seen. It's funny because listeners to this show know that I'm not the biggest fan of heavyweight MMA, just because of what happens if it's not the elite guys at the top. The Fabricio Werdum, Stipe and Miocic's, Overeems. If it's not those big names at the very top, it can get very bad very fast. And Derek Lewis is one of those guys. And the thing is that, and I mean this in a loving way, but even as tired as if Derek Lewis gets tired, he still goes out there and he slings. And I'm thinking back to his last fight, I believe. Let me click on the fight finder to see if this is the one I'm talking about. The one, not the one against Roy Nelson, not that one, but the one where he finished the guy in the third, the Victor Pesta fight, where he's on top of the guy. He keeps getting on top of him, pounding him out, like trying to finish him off, and he just couldn't get the job done. Those fights are hilarious in a sense. And if you sit back and think about it, man, Derek Lewis is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-2 in the UFC right now. So he's putting on a pretty good run. If he wins this fight this weekend, that's a 5-fight win streak. 5. What is he currently ranked? He is currently ranked 10 in the division. There are some good names ahead of him. So if he pulls off a win this weekend, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Shamil is ranked number 15. What does his resume look like? Because I'm not too familiar with him, to be honest. Let's see. 17-3. He's on a 2-fight win streak in the UFC. Wins over Anthony Hamilton and Walt Harris. So yeah, let's see how this goes. I'm going to pick Derek Lewis in this fight here, but you never know what happens with heavyweight MMA. I have a good friend that is fighting in CFFC right now. His name is Sean Teed, and I like to give him a hashtag of make heavyweight MMA great again. Let's I want to keep that on deck until he makes his debut in the UFC at some point in time. But that's basically UFC Fight Night 102, which is on Friday, December 9th in Albany. Saturday's card is probably the most important one, definitely the one going on in Canada, UFC 206. Clearly, we had the situation where Daniel Cormier was pulled off the card, Anthony Johnson were pulled off the card, and that allowed for Max Holloway, Anthony Pettis to become the main event for an interim featherweight title. Regardless of how this fight was created, regardless of what was the controversy around why this fight was set up, um, this is still an excellent fight. Holloway versus Pettis is an excellent, excellent fight. On one hand, you have Holloway, a guy who's been putting in work in the featherweight division, fighting against Anthony Pettis, who kind of was gifted this opportunity to be a champion again, even if it is an interim champion. But Holloway has been doing work. He's 9 wins straight since losing to Conor McGregor 3 years ago. So yeah, I'm picking Holloway to win this fight because of his propensity to he's not going to stay in the same spot to allow Anthony to tee off on him with striking, especially with counter strikes. I expect a lot of movement out of Holloway, a lot of use of his jab. Let's see who's the bigger fighter. I think it's going to be Holloway, but let me check. Let's see. So here. No, actually. So Holloway is a taller fighter, but Pettis has a longer reach. Holloway is 69 inches. Pettis has 72. So that's an interesting point there. So we'll see how that plays out for both men come Saturday. I'm picking Holloway just because he's looked so great in his last few fights, and Pettis is coming off of that win over Do Bronx. But before that, he lost three straight. So let's see what happens when this fight goes down at UFC 206. But remember, I'm picking Holloway, as I already said. Another big fight: Donald Cerrone, Matt Brown. Obviously, Cerrone has all of the MMA AA information and all that swirling around him right now, but he's also fighting a dangerous striker in Matt Brown. So I think that's going to be a big fight there. I'm picking Donald to get the win here, but he's been on an impressive win streak since moving up to 170 pounds. Brown, on the other hand, has been on another downward swing of his career. So let's see, Cerrone has won 3 in a row since moving up earlier at the end of last year, while Brown is coming off of that loss, off of his second loss. He lost once to Damian Maia, and then he lost to Jake Ellenberger at UFC 201. So this will be an interesting fight for him. I don't know. I mean, if he loses, he'll be 1-5 in his last 6. So maybe he'll be on his way out of the organization. But this is a man who's done well in recent years. He had that tough run early in the sport, but now he kind of turned the corner, was doing great. Now he's turned the corner and was heading back down. Remember, this is a guy that has a unanimous decision win over Stephen Thompson, but that's Stephen Thompson 4 years ago. This Stephen Thompson today would probably smoke him. So I'm looking at picking Donald Cerrone in the co-main event. Also on his card, I'm interested in Doho Choi. The UFC is pushing this guy. They give him some good promo coming into this fight. He's coming off of 3. He's 14-1, never lost in the UFC, and he has 12 first round finishes. 12 knockouts, excuse me, 12 knockouts, and his 3 UFC wins have all been first round finishes. So, and those are over some good wins. The Sam Cecilia, Thiago Tavares fights were not cupcake fights at all. So to see him finish both of those guys in the first round, is pretty compelling. And so now he has former contender Cub Swanson to deal with. So that if he comes out of this fight with a win, especially with a highlight reel knockout, we may be looking at somebody worth paying close attention to. He's only 25 years old. He's very unassuming when you look at him, but then he gets into the cage and he just blows guys away. So I'm looking forward to seeing his fight on Saturday as well. I'm not gonna make a pick in that one though, just because I know I'm not the biggest fan of picking against Cub Swanson, to be honest. So yeah, I'm not gonna make a pick in that one. Actually, no, I'm gonna go ahead and make a pick. I'm gonna pick Cub Swanson. We also have Tim Kennedy and Kelvin Gastelum. Tim Kennedy is also, as I mentioned, a member of that MMA AA. So we'll see what happens, win or lose, what occurs with him. But he's fighting Kelvin Gastelum. I'm not the biggest fan of Gastelum, especially with his weight issues. I'm looking more at this being a fight for Kennedy to win, especially with him coming off of such a long layoff. I'm assuming he's healthy, and he has some key motivation right now, because he kind of has to, like, this is a must-win fight for him. He cannot be put in a situation where he loses and then has to look back at the UFC like, hey, also I helped jumpstart this unit and I'm one of the main um, spokespeople. So let's see who else is fighting. Jordan Mean is coming back after his brief retirement as well. Him and Frankie Perez actually retired around the same time, and they're both coming back around the same time. I'm a big fan of Zach Makowski, him and Dustin Ortiz. Both of these guys I'm very interested in, so I'm looking forward to that flyweight fight. Valerie Letourneau is back on the card. My boy, your favorite heavyweight and mine, Nicky Thrills, is back on in the octagon. Man, he's been on quite a run as of late too. He has won, I think, 3 or 4 in a row. He's won 1, 2, 5 actually. So he has an opportunity of winning his 6th fight in a row. What is he ranked? He is ranked number. Oh, he's not. Wait, is he fighting at 205 now? I forgot he's fighting at 205. So he's ranked number 8 in the division. So he's going on a run. So I'm interested in seeing what's next for him if he can get the win. Of course, I want to pick Nicky Thrills because he always goes out there and he puts on a damn show. He's won 5 in a row with 5 straight finishes, none going past the 3rd round. Hell of a run there. Also, who else is fighting that has Lando Venata? We remember this guy from being the dude who almost put Tony Ferguson out, and shocked the world a couple months back. Now he's finally getting his UFC debut with with the full camp behind him. So let's see what this guy goes out there and does. He's fighting John McDessie, someone who I think is going to sit there and try to sling with him. So I think that's an important fight for him. If he gets, I expect him to win this fight, and he kind of caught a lot of us off guard when he stepped in to fight Ferguson last minute, and I think that this is a good moment for him to get a pretty big win here. And we got Rustam Kabilo. Yeah, those are all the fights I really want to focus on, point out, and talk about. So yeah, UFC 206, while it doesn't have that Cormier Johnson fight, I think it's still a pretty solid card. Definitely the main card, some of the prelim fights, and I'm looking forward to seeing what goes on this weekend. It's a pretty good slate from top to bottom. So let's see what else we have going on. So yeah, Schwan was unable to join us. So yeah, something else I wanted to talk about earlier. I meant to point out there will be a piece on MMA ratings about this as well. But Ryan Hall, his performance is drawing a lot of controversy, a lot of conversation for how he defeated Ryan Hall on last Saturday. And I actually wrote 2 pieces about this. One will be on MMA ratings today. The other is on Bloody Elbow. And I am not pissed at him at all. He went out there and he did what he's supposed to do. The name Floyd Mayweather once said, "The name of the game is a hit without being hit." Listen to that. Hit without getting hit. And that's exactly what Ryan Hall did. He only took 12 significant shots in 15 minutes of fighting. That's hella impressive. He put Gray Maynard in frequent danger anytime the fight hit the ground. Gray wanted no parts of him. He landed 43 significant shots on the feet, most of which were kicks to the head. And we talk about running. We talk about guys avoiding striking and avoiding getting into exchanges on the feet. Well, Gray Maynard didn't want. He ran from Ryan Hall and exchanging and mixing up with him on the floor. So if you're criticizing Ryan Hall for how he performed and for the way he was ducking down and going for Imanari rolls and attacking the legs and feet, then you gotta be mad at Maynard for not being willing to mix it up on the ground. I mean, he didn't want to take any risk and get down there on the floor with him. So yeah, so yeah, I'm not upset with what Hall did at all. I think he went out there and I think he did a great job. And he also mentioned that he's working with Stephen Thompson, which I think is something that we need to really kind of pay attention to because that's the kind of style that he wants to employ. A lot of distance, managing distance, kicks. He was popping Gray Maynard to the face time and time and time and time again. And I don't think that that's something that we can ignore. So again, if you are upset with what Ryan Hall did, I think you need to reevaluate your education or interest in MMA because he did what he needed to do. He went out there, he fought well, he implemented a game plan that negated what Gray Maynard wanted to do, and he got the win, which is all that we can ask to do every time we step into the cage. Excuse me. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring tonight's show to a close. As always, as I've mentioned, I am Raphael Garcia, and you can follow me in my sports ramblings and musings at @rgarcia_sports. You can catch Schwan Humes on there as well. You can catch us both putting together work for MMA ratings on the website, and you can see our content there. You can catch everything that we do every week. Here we're back on Wednesdays. Sometimes we'll reschedule to Thursdays, but as always, be sure to follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and catch our shows to listen to everything about the sport, what's going on in the week, and what's coming up from the fight previews for this coming weekend. So again, I'll be back next Wednesday. Shawan will be back next Wednesday as well. And we always appreciate your support. Like the show on YouTube, share the show on your social media channels, and get back to us next week for another great MMA Ratings podcast. Have a great night, everybody.